What we're seeing right now is a violent uprising, and that's an important place to start. That's an important thing to establish, because the mainstream media right now are doing what they do. They are acting as propaganda arms of the radical left. They're telling you that these are lawful protests with some unrest. That's a phrase CNN used yesterday, kind of reminiscent of the fiery but mostly peaceful protest line they used on us during the BLM riots in 2020. But what Donald Trump is reacting to is not only violence, it's violence that was pre-planned and coordinated.
Los Angeles is on fire, literally, and much of the blame lies squarely with radical Democrat leaders like Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, while they defend violent mobs that are burning American flags and attacking ICE agents. President Trump is stepping in with strength, deploying the National Guard and the Marines to restore order. So what comes next? Liz Wheeler is the fearless host of The Liz Wheeler Show, seen on the Blaze TV, and she's here to break down the madness in L.A. and much more. Liz, great to see you. Hey, I see President Trump sending in the National Guard and the Marines. And look, there's a precedent with the National Guard for sure. I think of George H.W. Bush during the L.A. riots of 1992. I think of then Governor Ronald Reagan, governor of California back in the 60s, also sending the National Guard. But when Donald Trump does it, he's suddenly Hitler. Liz, can you talk about the necessity here to send in the National Guard, the Marines, and get this madness in L.A. under control?
Yeah, thanks, Eric, for having me today. Thanks for covering this topic. It's an important topic. I think most of us are watching what's unfolding in Los Angeles. A lot of us watch on X because that's where we're getting the real footage of what's happening. And I think that's a good place to start before we even talk about President Trump's actions. He's acting with strength, as he should, but we have to understand the reality of what we're seeing out in Los Angeles. These are not peaceful protests. This is not lawful assembly. This is not a group of citizens in righteous indignation raising their voices against, in opposition of a government policy. What we're seeing right now is violence. You know that. I know that. Everyone else knows that. We see law enforcement being assaulted. We see these rioters pouring gasoline on car engines and lighting them on fire. Last night, we saw rioters wearing masks, breaking the glass windows of the LAPD precinct building. We saw them blocking highways. We see them waving Mexican flags. We see them wearing the keffiyehs, the pro-Hamas, pro-terrorism neckerchiefs. What we're seeing right now is a violent uprising, and that's an important place to start. That's an important thing to establish, because the mainstream media right now are doing what they do. They are acting as propaganda arms of the radical left. They're telling you that these are lawful protests with some unrest. That's a phrase CNN used yesterday, kind of reminiscent of the fiery but mostly peaceful protest line they used on us during the BLM riots in 2020. But what Donald Trump is reacting to is not only violence, it's violence that was pre-planned and coordinated. If you look at who's behind these riots, these are not organic. This is not grassroots. This is something that is to serve a political purpose. What's behind the groups that are behind these riots? For example, there's a group called the PSL. That stands for the Party of Socialism and Liberation. They're the group that's printing all the protest signs, that's mobilizing a lot of these rioters to get them to LA to tell them where to assemble. This is a communist party, a self-described communist party, and which is bad enough in and of itself, but it's funded by a man, a billionaire named Neville Singham. Neville Singham actually lives in China, in Shanghai. It's a special permission to live there by the Chinese Communist Party. And he is funding the Communist Party group, this PSL group that's staging these protests. So these are not organic. This is not grassroots. This is not only just violence in and of itself, which would be bad enough. This is a Chinese communist funded operation that's intended to sow civil unrest in the United States. And so President Trump is responding exactly as he should, with both calmness, clarity, and strength. We don't tolerate assault on law and order in our country. We simply don't. And President Trump is finally responding as he should be.
Liz, great points all around. I see this unholy alliance of radical Islamists, radical leftists, literal invaders that Joe Biden led into the country. And it seems the end game here, Liz, is to make all of America look a lot like Los Angeles right now, for the chaos to spread. Is that how you see it? I know this is coordinated, as you laid out. It's premeditated. What's their end game?
Yeah, this has always been the end game. I mean, you see these pro-illegal alien riots beginning to spread across the United States at this moment. I think we saw some in Dallas start last night. They even got a little violent down in Dallas. There were some popping up in North Carolina. We know that they have more of these riots planned for Saturday, June 14th. It's President Trump's birthday. It's Flag Day. It's what the left is now calling No King's Day, and they're planning more of these such protests. The goal of these leftists, I've been calling these riots out in LA a vanguard. That word is very important because a vanguard is a moment or a movement. It's the time when communists who have infiltrated a civil society, they've taken over our institutions, they've indoctrinated children, they've sowed civil unrest. It's the time when this civil agitation is translated into the imposition of communism. It's the time when the so-called oppressed have been pit against the so-called oppressors to the point where violence erupts. And what's the purpose of that violence? The purpose of the violence isn't just to hurt people. The purpose of that violence is to usher in the midst of that chaos, the communism that these radical leftists have sought all along. So this moment is very important. This is not a one-off riot that happened to get violent out in LA. This is just the beginning of what I predicted would happen before the election. I said the left has to be violent. They have to engage in violence. They have to use terrorism as their tactics because they can't sell to the American people their poisonous ideas. We reject them. We rejected Joe Biden. We rejected critical race theory. We rejected transgender ideology. We rejected this notion that America is somehow tainted by our founding and that therefore illegitimate and evil. We've rejected all of this.
Liz, we had a very interesting exchange, speaking of X and social media, between Simone Biles, the Olympic gold medalist, and Riley Gaines, of course, a great competitive swimmer when she was at the University of Kentucky. But Simone Biles criticizing Riley Gaines for taking a strong stand against men in women's sports. But I don't think this exchange, Liz, went how Simone thought it would. People were piling on her for defending trans men in women's sports. What did that say? People were defending Riley Gaines. What did that say about where we're at right now? To me, this was very encouraging. And during this so-called Pride Month of June, we've heard less and less of the rainbow madness, it seems.
Yeah, one of my favorite phrases is, not an original phrase of mine, of course, but just follow the money. A lot of times the nuttiest, weirdest ideas make sense when you understand who someone is associated with. And Simone Biles made what I would call a strategically poor decision to attack Riley Gaines. And when I say strategically poor, let's just put the morality and the biology aside for a second. The majority of the American people don't want boys in girls' sports. It's what we're calling an 80-20 issue, because even if you're a Democrat, even if you're on the left, you know a boy is a boy. You know it's unfair for a boy to be in girls' sports, and you know that boy isn't a girl just because he puts lipstick and a dress on. This is just common sense, and the majority of the American people have had enough of that madness. And so for Simone Biles to pretend, as an athlete herself, that men who quote-unquote identify as women are women and should be allowed to compete in women's sports, it's beyond stupid. Simone Biles is an incredible athlete, but even as one of the most elite female athletes in the world of this generation, she would have won nothing had she competed against men. That's just the obvious reality of the differences, the biological differences between men and women. So to attack Riley Gaines, who had achievement, she would have won had it not been for Leah Thomas, the former Will Thomas, who identified as Leah Thomas, stealing that achievement from her. Riley Gaines had the courage to speak out when a whole generation of women were essentially being erased by the radical left, telling us that men are actually women if they want to be women. But Simone Biles is not only making a strategically poor choice, she's not only denying reality, which in my opinion is the more important part here. It's not even a matter of whether it's fair for men to play in women's sports. Obviously, it's not. The more important issue is that the reality is men are men and women are women. And if you deny reality, you are denying God. I don't want to live in a country where policies are based on a denial of God. But all that being said, the interesting part of Simone Biles is she has partnered recently with an organization backed by Bill Gates's ex-wife, Melinda Gates. Now, as you know, and everyone with us tonight knows, Bill Gates and Melinda Gates are about as radical left as you can possibly be. Simone Biles partnering with Melinda Gates, the organization and the stuff that they're working on, they have pages on their website dedicated to pride, dedicated to this LGBTQIA+++ agenda. So in a sense, it should come as no surprise, even though it is morally egregious, politically stupid, biologically insane for Simone Biles to say what she says. She's tied to the money that's coming from her partnership with Melissa Gates, and Melissa Gates is ideologically driven to promote that LGBTQIA+++ agenda. When you follow the money, these frauds are always exposed.
Yeah, so true. And as you said, Liz, at the end of the day, the trans so-called movement is essentially saying that God made a mistake. He meant to make that, he should have made them a man or a woman. They're in the wrong gender. It's God's fault. So if you want to bring faith into it, you've come to the right place, Liz. You're exactly right. Hey, keep up your great work. Faith, family, and freedom. Liz is hitting on that every night, folks, on the Liz Wheeler Show on the Blaze TV. Liz, we'll see you again soon. Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.